What happens when one of America's most polished journalists meets the royal family's most controversial figure? At first glance, it seemed like another calm, high-profile sit-down. A cozy studio, polite greetings, and the appearance of civility. But under CNN's soft lights, Anderson Cooper wasn't there to play along. And Meghan Markle wasn't there to be humbled. She arrived confident, with a cool smile and a bold sense of purpose, the same attitude that has divided audiences everywhere. What started as a polite conversation quickly turned into a verbal duel. One side came ready with facts, the other with fire. And as the mask slipped away, the world watched something far beyond a normal interview. They saw a reckoning. The CNN studio sparkled under carefully planned lighting. Everything looked perfect. Anderson Cooper, with his cue cards lined up just right, sat motionless as the cameras waited to catch every movement. Opposite him, Meghan Markle looked flawless, legs crossed, hair gleaming under the lights like a halo. She offered that signature smile seen on dozens of magazine covers, a smile clearly meant to charm and distract. "Meghan," Anderson said smoothly, "thank you for being here tonight." "Of course," she replied, voice sweet but with a hint of performance. "It's always a pleasure to speak with real journalists." Anderson caught the jab, but didn't react. He nodded politely. "Let's start simple. How are you and Harry?" For a second, her smile paused. Then she leaned back, relaxed. "We're doing great. Stronger than ever, actually, despite what the tabloids want people to believe." Her voice was sharp now, every word crisp, slightly defensive. Anderson nodded slowly, holding her gaze. "There have been stories, some suggesting tension in your marriage. That Harry's having a hard time being away from his family." "That stories?" Meghan interrupted with a light laugh, though it sounded forced. "Are we really going to waste time repeating gossip? Honestly, Anderson, I expected better from you." The invited audience behind the cameras shifted uncomfortably. Her response was bold, almost rude. Anderson, though, stayed calm. "I get your frustration," he said. "But people are curious about how you're both adjusting after stepping away from royal life. Isn't that a fair question?" Meghan's smile tightened. "Adjusting?" she repeated, as if testing the word. "We don't adjust. We lead. We've made choices that protect our peace and truth. If people don't like that, maybe they should stop projecting their own unhappiness onto us." Her tone had a cold edge. What was supposed to be an answer sounded more like a scolding. Anderson's face remained unreadable. He gently shuffled his cards, a small move, but it felt like a challenge. "Let's talk about those choices," he said. "You've spoken openly about your struggles with the royal family, feeling unsupported, even silenced. But since stepping back, you've created a successful brand, podcasts, streaming deals, book contracts. Critics say you've built success by using the same institution you've condemned. What's your response to that?" Meghan tilted her head. Her smile returned, but it was colder now. "I'd say those critics should try living my life before judging. I won't apologize for surviving, Anderson. I won't apologize for earning an income after being cut off." Her voice was louder now, more firm. What started as a chat was quickly turning into something far more intense. Anderson leaned in slightly, keeping his voice even. "But Meghan, you weren't exactly left without resources. You had a successful acting career. Harry has inherited wealth. Some people feel your story of financial struggle doesn't match the facts. How do you explain that?" Her eyes narrowed. "Perception," she said sharply. "That's the problem. Everyone thinks they know us, like we're characters in a TV show. They have no idea what we gave up." Anderson let the silence linger, letting her words settle over the audience. Then he asked softly, "What exactly did you give up, Meghan?" For the first time, she paused. Her lips parted, but she spoke more slowly. "Privacy," she said. "Peace. The right to live without being picked apart by people we've never even met. Anderson nodded, though there was a glint of steel in his eyes. Yet here you are, he said, telling your story on your terms to millions. Doesn't that go against the idea of wanting privacy? Meghan sat up straighter. It's not about contradiction. It's about control. We choose what to share. That's our right. Of course, Anderson replied. But when you choose the spotlight, you also invite questions. You can't demand privacy while standing on a global stage. That's the balance journalism requires. The air in the studio tightened. Meghan crossed her legs more firmly, clasping her hands together. Her pleasant mask was beginning to slip. Balance? She echoed, her voice heavy with sarcasm. That's rich, Anderson. You talk about balance, but you sit there just like every other man who's tried to cut me down. Her words struck hard. The room went still. Anderson blinked once, slowly. But his tone stayed calm. I'm not trying to cut you down, Meghan. I'm holding you accountable. That's not the same. Her laugh came short, humorless. Accountable to who? You. The media that twists my words? A public that already hates me? Anderson's voice never changed. Accountable to the truth, he said plainly. The silence that followed was heavy. A polite interview had turned into a tense standoff. And for the first time, Meghan's polished calm looked ready to crack. The cameras kept rolling smoothly, but something in the CNN studio had shifted. What started off as a clean, respectful atmosphere was now charged and uneasy. The earlier shine of civility had faded, and tension filled the air. Anderson Cooper remained calm, pen resting between his fingers, while Meghan Markle sat upright, her smile fading into something tighter, her irritation becoming harder to hide. Anderson's next move was careful. He didn't even look at his card. He already knew what came next. Meghan, he said evenly, let's talk about Harry. He's spoken publicly about the emotional toll this journey has taken on him. Being distanced from his family, losing the military roles he once held dear, how is he really adjusting? Meghan's expression froze for a split second, but the trained smile quickly returned. It was sharper now, like broken glass catching the light. Harry is doing great. He's never been happier. We've built a life that truly reflects our values. So no, Anderson. He's not longing for the past, if that's what you're getting at. Anderson kept his voice calm. I'm not suggesting anything, Meghan. I'm just asking. Meghan cut in sharply. Asking based on what? Reports? Which ones? The same tabloids that stalk us, lie about us, profit off of our lives? We don't dignify gossip. The studio audience stirred again, picking up on the heat in her response. But Anderson stayed focused, his tone cool and steady. Not only tabloids, he said. There've been quiet comments from people close to the family, that Harry feels isolated, caught between two very different worlds. Do you think there's any truth in that? Meghan's eyes narrowed. Do you think Harry's not capable of thinking for himself? Maybe, just maybe, he's a grown man who makes his own choices. Or would you rather stick to the story that I somehow control him? Anderson leaned in, his voice still soft, but now firm. It's not about control. It's about what he gave up. Before all this, Harry was beloved by the British public. He had a clear role, a purpose, strong ties with the country. Since leaving that life behind, a lot of that has faded. So the question is fair. Has this marriage cost him more than it's given him? The air went heavy. Meghan's jaw clenched, and her voice cracked slightly as she answered. That's insulting. We are partners. Equals. Harry hasn't lost anything. He gained freedom. He gained love. He gained me. Anderson's expression didn't change. And in return, he said, he lost his family, his titles, and the deep affection of a nation. Was that a fair exchange? Meghan's laugh was sharp, cold. You sound like a bitter royalist, Anderson, the kind who thinks the monarchy is some sacred thing. Let me remind you, this isn't the 1700s. Harry doesn't need to kneel before anyone to earn their approval. There was an audible stir from the audience. Her words, dripping with defiance, hit hard. Anderson stayed steady, inhaling slowly. Let's shift gears, he said. Before you met Harry, you had a successful acting career. Many people knew you from Suits. Do you ever miss that life? Ever regret leaving behind your own professional identity? Meghan tilted her head, a faint smirk curling at her lips. Regret? Not even a little. I outgrew that world. Dressing up and reading lines on a set doesn't compare to the real impact I've made. I didn't downgrade, Anderson. I upgraded. The arrogance in her tone was clear. Anderson's brows rose slightly, though his voice stayed even. Some would argue you didn't upgrade. That you traded independence for fame. That you went from being Meghan Markle, actress, to Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, known more for your title than yourself. The mask cracked again. Her voice came out colder. That's a sexist, narrow view. I'm not just someone's wife. Of course, Anderson replied calmly. But if it weren't for Harry, would you be here tonight? Would Netflix and Spotify have signed you? Would publishers be chasing your story? Meghan's lips pressed into a thin, hard line. Her reply came icy and firm. You clearly don't know who I am. I've always had presence. I've always had influence. The world just wasn't ready to admit it, until I forced them to. Anderson let the silence stretch, his calm demeanor making her rising anger even more noticeable. Then, softly, he asked, or did the world only notice because of the crown you married into? That question landed hard. Meghan's eyes flashed, her breath catching in the mic. She leaned forward, now openly confrontational. You don't get to define me, Anderson. Your questions are insulting. Anderson leaned back, voice lowering to that careful, deliberate tone known to disarm even the most powerful. I'm not defining your worth, Meghan. I'm simply asking, was the worth you claim truly earned, or borrowed? The audience drew in a collective breath. The tension now buzzed in the air. Meghan's smile had vanished, replaced by a chilly mix of anger and fear. Her polished exterior was cracking, and for Anderson, it was clear, this interview had only just begun. The air in the studio felt heavier now. Meghan Markle sat stiffly in her chair, her lips drawn tight, the smooth charm she'd arrived with now visibly strained. Anderson Cooper, meanwhile, was still composed. His notes were neatly placed, but he didn't need them, not anymore. He had the rhythm of a man who knew exactly where the conversation was going. And Meghan could feel it. Meghan, he began again, voice calm and direct. Let's talk about what many people are wondering. You've spoken often about the hurt you experienced during your time with the royal family. But it also gave you global recognition. Without that royal platform, without the name, do you think the world would still be listening to you? Her eyes narrowed. So now you're saying I'm only relevant because of them? She said. Anderson didn't blink. I'm saying the attention you have today was amplified by the institution you now criticize. That's not judgment, that's reality. She leaned in slightly, voice sharper. So I should have stayed silent? Endured racism, being ignored, crying out for help and getting nothing, just to keep their perfect image clean? The audience shifted again, sensing the heat rising in her voice. But Anderson remained infuriatingly calm. There's a difference between speaking truth to power and building a brand around grievances. At first, people admired your courage. But now, some feel the message has become more about managing a narrative than exposing the truth. Meghan let out a short, bitter laugh. Managing a narrative? That's rich, coming from someone in your seat. Anderson, you sit there in an expensive suit, behind your desk, with your privilege, and try to tell me how I should share my story. Anderson's gaze didn't move. Privilege, he said, is being born into a monarchy. having palaces, staff, and worldwide admiration. And yet the British people, who welcomed you at first, now seem divided, if not critical. Why do you think that is? Her jaw clenched. Because the British press poisoned them against me. That's why. Anderson leaned in slightly, his voice still smooth. Is it that simple? Or did the public's views shift because of your choices? Leaving your duties, speaking out against the monarchy while still using its titles, moving across the world, and signing massive media deals? Her eyes flashed. We had to move, Anderson. We had to protect ourselves. Protect yourselves from what? Anderson asked, voice barely raised. From scrutiny? From responsibilities you took on when you joined that family? His words sliced through the air like a razor. Meghan's calm cracked again, her voice rising. Responsibilities? You mean smiling and waving while being treated like a burden? That's not a life, Anderson. That's a prison. Anderson paused, letting the words echo in the room. Then he asked the question everyone had been waiting for. Did Queen Elizabeth ever mistreat you personally? Meghan hesitated. A flicker of calculation passed over her face before she gave a polite, practiced smile. I have nothing but respect for the late Queen, she said, voice clipped. But the system she stood for? That system was outdated. It was stifling. Anderson's voice sharpened slightly. So it wasn't her, but the institution? Exactly. Meghan replied quickly, clearly relieved to be back on familiar ground. Anderson nodded slowly. Still, that institution gave you attention, power, influence. Before it, you were a supporting actress. With it, you became a global figure. Doesn't that complicate your story? Her control finally snapped. I don't need a crown to matter, Anderson. I never did. That monarchy needed me more than I ever needed them. I was the fresh energy, the diversity, the modern spirit they couldn't create on their own. A ripple of gasps moved through the audience. Her tone was confident, even arrogant. Anderson's lips pressed into a tight, careful line. That may be your view, he replied, but from the outside it's hard to see it that way. The monarchy has survived for centuries. You were part of it for less than 2 years before you walked away. Did you really change it? Or did it change you? Her laugh was harsh now. I opened eyes. I revealed what they wanted hidden. That's more than most ever do. Anderson leaned back, his gaze steady. Or maybe, he said calmly, you just burned every bridge behind you, and called it progress. The silence that followed was loud. Meghan's chest rose and fell quickly. Her anger was visible now, no longer masked. The audience was frozen, caught in the intensity. Anderson didn't look down at his notes. He didn't need to. Let's talk about your move to the US, he said smoothly. Some people say it's hypocritical. You left the UK asking for privacy, but since then, you've done podcasts, interviews, documentaries, all keeping you in the spotlight. How do you explain that? Meghan's voice dripped with scorn. It's called survival, Anderson. We were cut off. We had to take care of ourselves. Unlike the firm, no one's paying our bills anymore. Anderson raised an eyebrow. His tone remained polite. Except for the streaming companies that paid you tens of millions for your story. That doesn't exactly sound like hardship. A flush crept into Meghan's face. How dare you reduce our entire struggle to money? She snapped. This isn't about being rich. It's about safety. About dignity. About protecting our children. Anderson's voice came soft, but sharp. Protecting your children, or protecting your brand? The question hit like a punch. Meghan froze. Her lips parted slightly, but she said nothing. For the first time, she looked truly shaken. Anderson let the silence stretch just long enough. Meghan, he said quietly, you left a centuries-old institution saying you wanted peace. But what you've built doesn't look like peace. It looks like a business. The audience murmured. The interview was crossing into dangerous territory now. Meghan's face hardened. Her voice trembled with anger. "You don't get to define me," she said sharply. "You don't get to tell me what my life means." Anderson's gaze was unwavering. "I don't need to define you," he said. "The world is watching, and they see the contradictions." The interview, once civil, was now a full-on battlefield, and Meghan Markle was losing control with every question. The studio remained quiet, except for the hum of the lights. Meghan Markle sat upright, her hands tightly clasped in her lap, knuckles pale. The glossy calm she wore so well during public appearances had all but vanished, replaced by flickers of anger and clear discomfort. Anderson Cooper, still poised and controlled, leaned in slightly like a prosecutor presenting his final argument. "Meghan," he began, his tone steady and firm. "You've spoken often about being silenced, about the pain you endured, about leaving behind an institution that failed you. But let's be honest, would we even be having this conversation if you hadn't married Prince Harry?" The question hit hard, like a slap. The entire studio seemed to hold its breath. Meghan's eyes flared, but she forced a smirk. "So that's it," she snapped. "Now you're saying I'm nothing without him? How predictable." Anderson's gaze stayed fixed. "I'm saying your public image, your influence, your book deals, your podcast contracts, they all stem from one thing. You married into the most famous family in the world. And since leaving that family, you've built a career by criticizing it while still benefiting from its name. Isn't that true?" Her voice rose, defensive and sharp. "That's a deeply sexist thing to say. I had a career before Harry. I had success before Harry. I mattered before Harry." Anderson's response was delivered with calm precision. "Yes, Meghan. You were an actress on a mid-level cable show. Talented, perhaps, but not a global name. You became one the moment you put on that tiara and walked into Windsor Castle. That's not sexism. That's just the truth." Her mouth opened, but she said nothing. The silence spoke louder than any argument. Anderson continued, his voice quiet but unrelenting. "You've made millions through interviews, shows, and partnerships, all based on a title and a family you say hurt you. You say you were silenced, yet no one has spoken more. You say you wanted privacy, yet you've remained in the spotlight, by choice. You claim powerlessness, yet you've shaped an entire narrative to your advantage. Meghan, do you not see the contradiction?" Her composure finally broke. "You don't understand," she said, voice shaking. "You don't know what I've been through. You sit there acting like you do, but you don't. The isolation, the fear, the constant attacks. You have no idea." Anderson leaned back slightly, his expression solemn. "I understand what you've told the public. And what I see," he said carefully, "is someone who wants all the benefits of royalty without the responsibilities that come with it. Someone who says she's independent but whose entire platform crumbles without Harry's name. Take away the crown, the connections, the headlines, what's left?" Her lip quivered. She looked down, trying to collect herself, but her voice cracked as she tried to respond. "I am more than his wife. I am more than a duchess. I—" Her sentence fell apart. Her eyes began to well with tears. "I am—" But the words didn't come. And then, unexpectedly, the emotion overwhelmed her. Meghan turned her face to the side, blinking rapidly, trying to hold back tears. Her carefully built public image was slipping under the weight of the questions she couldn't escape. The studio audience was silent, unsure if they should feel sympathy or simply stunned by the turn of events. Anderson's voice returned, firm but not unkind. "Meghan," he said, "this isn't about cruelty. It's about accountability. You've made serious claims against powerful people who can't defend themselves publicly. You've profited from those claims. But when asked for specifics, for details, for proof, all we get is emotion. And while that might earn sympathy, it doesn't answer the hard questions." Meghan shook her head, tears slipping down her cheek now. "You don't know what it's like," she whispered. "None of you do." Anderson exhaled slowly, then turned toward the camera. His voice took on the weight of a final statement, not just to Meghan, but to millions watching at home. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "this is what happens when public stories meet real questions. Meghan Markle came here tonight to share her truth. But journalism isn't about personal versions. It's about facts. And sometimes those facts are uncomfortable." The camera slowly zoomed in as he delivered the final line, a clear, firm conclusion. "Titles and fame can give someone a louder voice, but they can't replace substance. And without Harry's name, Meghan Markle wouldn't be here tonight." The words landed hard, like a gavel striking a bench. Meghan lowered her head, her shoulders shaking slightly as Anderson gently set his pen on the desk. "This interview," he said quietly, "is over." The screen faded to black, leaving millions of viewers stunned. The screen faded out from Anderson Cooper's closing words, but the silence it left behind still rang loud. Across living rooms and screens everywhere, audiences sat in stunned quiet, replaying what they had just seen, not an interview, but a confrontation, a dismantling, a reckoning that felt both public and deeply personal. Some viewers felt sympathy for Meghan Markle, others felt validation, but everyone agreed on one thing: they had just witnessed one of the most explosive interviews in CNN's history. Anderson Cooper hadn't raised his voice, hadn't interrupted, hadn't shown aggression, yet each of his questions struck like a scalpel, carefully removing the public image to expose what lay beneath. Meghan, despite her fame, poise, and media training, had cracked under pressure. Her charm, so often her shield, had melted away in the face of relentless scrutiny. Her defenses, built on personal experience and emotional truth, collided with the journalist's quiet demand for clarity and facts. And in that clash, the contradictions began to show. She came in with the intention of owning her narrative, controlling the lens through which the world saw her. But what played out instead was a slow unraveling. Anderson never called her a liar. He never insulted her. He simply asked the questions the public had been whispering for years, and gave her the space to answer. But in that space, her polished answers began to fall apart. The camera didn't lie. The body language said as much as the words. The pauses. The silence. The shift in tone. The breaking of her voice. By the end, Meghan's eyes were wet, her voice trembling, her posture tense and defensive. The certainty she entered with had been replaced by something far less stable: doubt, anger, even fear. Anderson, ever the professional, wrapped the interview without drama. No gloating, no personal attacks. Just a pen placed neatly on the desk, a quiet farewell, and a message that echoed louder than anything else: fame without truth is hollow. And truth, no matter how uncomfortable, demands to be heard. Back in the studio, producers stood motionless for a moment, unsure whether what they had just recorded was television or history. Editors reviewed the footage. Executives braced for headlines. The control room knew this wasn't just going to trend, it was going to explode. And outside CNN's walls, the world was already reacting. Social media lit up with instant takes, some defending Meghan, accusing Anderson of being too harsh. Others praised his professionalism, saying he asked what no one else had dared. Commentators, influencers, and royal watchers scrambled to analyze every look, every word, every pause. The world had been handed a new media flashpoint, and it wasn't going to let go. But inside the interview room, there had only been two people. One asking questions, the other dodging answers. One pressing for truth, the other clinging to a version of it. And in that quiet room under bright lights, something rare happened. A powerful figure was held accountable, not by outrage or anger, but by quiet, unwavering inquiry. And that, more than anything, is what made this interview unforgettable. Closing call to action: if you found this breakdown as shocking as we did, don't forget to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another story like this. We've got more intense interviews, celebrity meltdowns, and behind-the-scenes showdowns coming your way. Because when powerful people are finally asked the tough questions, you never know what's going to happen.